Our brother has been jailed for life, and the judge who jailed him saw before him what? You are distracting me. The judge who jailed him, omotosho, saw things before him that made him to jail him for life. Good enough. But Mr. President has the greatest opportunity now. I'm not a lawyer, but I'm a lawmaker. I'm not a lawmaker. I'm not a judge. I'm a lawmaker. What I am saying today, that Mr. President
Leader, please.
Mr. President today has the greatest opportunity as a very courageous person, that today I know that
point of order.
The counsels to Mazi Kanu has not gone for appeal. We are not appealing today. We are demanding today that within the ambits of law of these 90 days, he has not gone to court. For Mr. President to give him a pardon and release Nnamdi Kanu.
I went to DSSS to go and give him the copy of the judgment where he was kept at the DSSS office at Airport Road. So on getting to that place, I was told by the DSSS officers that they have taken him out. They moved him out from that place this month. They are no longer there.
The day Nnamdi Kanu was convicted, it looked like somebody died in Eboland, everywhere in Eboland. It is certainly the same mood that we had the day by the news of his death was broken amongst us in Eboland. It was like hearing the news that thousands of soldiers have been killed. It's like Igbo nation was almost buried. It looks to the average Igbo man as though it was done to tell us that we can do nothing. You know, that's the way the feelings, because I am a bishop, the feelings on the street is what I'm bringing your way. People that came to me, people that called me and said, Bishop, what is the characteristics? I mean, big men, airlights, people that really matter in Eboland, Christian leaders, Igbo leaders, politicians who care. You know, we have politicians who don't care, who care only about their stomach, where belly face. But every Igbo man understood what happened, and there was a mourning mood everywhere on the street, and even up till now, we are still trying to revive our people to come, up with hope again, knowing that God is on the throne.
Hello everyone, before we continue with this series of interviews, in this development surrounding the case of Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, fresh controversies have erupted from different fronts: the courtroom, the Sokoto prison, the National Assembly, and even within his family circle. A serving lawmaker, Honorable Judge Uzodinobi, reportedly stood up to speak on Kanu's conviction as he asked, "Release our brother," only to be interrupted inside the chambers of the National Assembly. And this rises to the question, why does every attempt to raise Nnamdi Kanu's matter in the red or green chamber meet stiff resistance? Is the issue too sensitive, or is it something being, shaded from the Nigerian public? Prominent lawyer Maxwell Okpara has also revealed disturbing details about how Nnamdi Kanu was allegedly flown on a private jet after judgment, and the serious obstacles now facing attempts to properly file and pursue his appeal. If this is true, will a private jet be used every time he must appear in court? Or is Nnamdi Kanu being, quietly denied a genuine right of appeal without the government openly saying so? We will also address the report that Nnamdi Kanu has been denied access to speak with his wife, raising urgent questions about human rights, family access, and the limits of lawful detention in a constitutional democracy. Another major question hangs in the air. Will Nnamdi Kanu represent himself in the appeal court, or will he rebrief his legal team to take over his case? That we will also find out in this very interview. Also, beyond the court, the emotional temperature in Eboland continues to rise. Bishop Ikechukwu Egbonu has strongly reacted to Kanu's conviction, describing the day as one of the deep sorrow across the southeast, comparing it to the atmosphere when Evangelist Maxwell Okpara passed away. Then we're also going to talk about Nnamdi Kanu's option for bail. What lies ahead? Is legal appeal still a viable path? Is political intervention now the only realistic option? Or is Nigeria approaching a defining moment in this historical case? Ladies and gentlemen, before we break down all these developments, what they truly mean to Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, let's first listen carefully to the interview that has triggered these national conversations.
Honorable Judge Ozodinobi. I represent the good people of Unjikoka and Ochadunukofia Federal Constituency. I'm from Anambra State. Mine is a short one. I want to speak to the sovereignty of this country, of which we have gradually lost. As a child, I can beat my chest today that I'll be one of the few here standing that saw war as a child. You are distracting me. The judge who jailed him, omotosho, saw things before him that made him to jail him for life. Good enough. But Mr. President has the greatest opportunity now. I'm not a lawyer, but I'm a lawmaker. I'm not a lawmaker. I'm not a judge. I'm a lawmaker. What I am saying today, that Mr. President
Leader, please.
Mr. President today has the greatest opportunity as a very courageous person. We are not appealing today. We are demanding today that within the ambits of law of these 60, 90 days, he has not gone to court. For Mr. President to give him a pardon and release Nnamdi Kanu to us. I raise my case.
Okay, thank you, Karen. Thank you.
We're looking at the possible options available to the man, Mazi Nnamdi Kanu. Political options and the legal options. We're being joined right about now by Maxwell Okpara, who is a counsel to Mazi Nnamdi Kanu. So good to have you on the show, Maxwell.
It's my pleasure to be here once again. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Nigerians.
Yes, quickly, we would run as fast as we can, but if you can, help us understand, just give us a rundown of where Mazi Nnamdi Kanu is right now and the state of where he is at the moment. Just talk to us.
Just like as we had, on judgment was given on a Thursday, so and the judge directed that we should go and give him his a copy of the judgment. So we got the judgment, a copy of that judgment very late on that Thursday. So Friday morning around 10:11, I went to DSSS to go and give him the copy of the judgment where he was kept at the DSSS office at Airport Road. So on getting to that place, I was told by the DSS officers that they have taken him out. They moved him out from that place this month. They are no longer there. I said, where did they take him to? They said I should go to their headquarters. I went to their headquarters. So we met after hours. I met with some of my colleagues. That's a brother and some other person that came to meet me there. We met the director of operations. So they said that they have taken him to Sokoto, that they have landed in Sokoto. I said, why Sokoto? They said that was instruction. So I said, okay. So I started making arrangements. That was on that Friday. There's no way I go to Sokoto that day. So very early in the morning, I went to Sokoto with his brother. So we saw him. We discussed with him. So we have a discussion with him. So he's in prison in Sokoto, Medium Correctional Center. That's where he is now. So I was with him there for 2 days before I came back to Abuja for other preparations.
You know, said they're going to appeal against the judgment of Justice Omotosho. And I'm pretty sure that it's going to be the court of appeal there in Abuja. Now that it is so good, how will you be appearing in court? I don't know. How is it going to happen?
I think it's on a public knowledge that Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, for the purpose of this trial, because there are some other matters he's having against the federal government, which I think some of the matters I'm doing for him. So that's why I'm still his lawyer. But for the purpose of this trial, he's doing it by himself. Remember that there is an interlocutory appeal he filed against omotosho's ruling, and it was on record that he went to Court of Appeal to file it, and the one that he also filed in Supreme Court. You even watch the day he went to Supreme Court to file the matter by himself. So it is on record that he has been doing his matter by himself. Just like you ask, he has 90 days within which to appeal against that judgment, and today being Thursday is exactly 1 week that judgment was delivered. So today is the 27th. Now you will bear with me that 7 days has gone out from his 90 days, and he's in Sokoto. So we are asking, would they be bringing private jet? Because Nnamdi Kanu told me that they use one small presidential private jet. That's what they used to take him to Sokoto. So would they be also keep that private jet personally there at the airport in Sokoto there, so that every morning when he's coming to do something, they will bring him back to Abuja. After doing it, they will take him back to Sokoto. So the essence of Sokoto, that I don't know, because what they are now trying to say that Sokoto is more secured. Sokoto is more secured than FCT, than Abuja. But whichever that is the case, it is for them. Now he has filed a motion. He's filed a motion that was 3 days ago through his brother in Federal High Court, asking the court to order that he should that they should bring him back to Abuja so that he'll be able to do his appeal. So the boy, I learned that they are giving 4th of December for the motion to be taken. I don't know how he's going to take the motion, whether they will allow him to come and take the motion, because as I'm talking to you now, on record, he is handling this particular trial by himself. So, and he should be given that adequate time and facility to defend himself and file his appeal. It is his constitutional right. Except they are going to deny him that right, as they have been denying him in the course of the trial. So that I don't know. So he has not done anything with respect to his appeal. So he's waiting for them, because he can't do it in Sokoto. He must do it in Abuja. Abuja is the court of appeal that has jurisdiction.
Professor Maxwell, now this also speaks to concerns that many have raised, that the singular fact that he has chosen to defend himself. If he had a lawyer, most likely it could have been different with this current challenge that we are highlighting at this moment. Are we speaking to him? Are you speaking to him about a change of mind with him wanting to defend himself? Are we having that conversation with him at this point in time?
If he may change his mind, probably as the matter has left Federal High Court before we just omotosho to court of appeal, he may change his mind. Because people are saying that he sack his lawyers, Permit me to use this opportunity to inform you that Mazi Nnamdi Kanu never sack any of his lawyers. The only thing there is that, my brother, you are in the studio, I am a lawyer. You engage me to represent you as a lawyer. And while the matter is in court, you don't need a lawyer for. There are some things that you're supposed to know as somebody who is educated. The primary aspect of the law. Let me just say 1 + 1 is 2. And the law reads that 1 + 1 is no longer 2. 1 + 1 is 3. And I said, as court pleases. You will say, Barrister, what is going on in this my case? The lawyer said that the judge said that 1 + 1 is 2, is 3 instead of 2. And as a lawyer, I owe the court the duty. My client. My duty first is, as an officer in the Temple of Justice, is to the court, not my client first. My duty is to the court first. So whatever the court said, my own is as the court pleases. I'm expected to defend myself. So most of the times, I have done it on several occasions. as a person lawyer. I will see when I'm having issue in a particular matter and the judge is behaving somehow, I will call my client, say, please, for the sake of this thing, I would like to excuse myself in this matter. Either you represent yourself or you go and for another lawyer. I have done it because, one, there are some things that I will be doing. It will affect, it will amount to professional misconduct. So, on the combined effect of all this, there was an understanding. Allow me to submit. Wait, let me submit this thing so that continue. There was an understanding between his lawyers and him that he should be allowed to handle the matter, and I want to leave it at that. I won't go beyond that. So now changing in that particular court, in that Federal High Court. So now that the matter has gone to Court of Appeal, I don't know whether he will change his mind. So everything is still within his discretion. Our own is advice. His own is to take to give instruction.
All right. I'm sorry we have to cut you short because I know that as a lawyer or as with a lot of lawyers in Nigeria, everyone will have an opinion regarding the Nnamdi Kanu case. But I really want to move away and look into his political options. Politically, considering how far this case has gone and how wide it has gone, what are the possible options that could favor him if we're looking at it from a political angle now?
Well, I don't know what is the mind of the federal government, and I don't know what is the mind of the Mazi Nnamdi Kanu. But I have, as somebody that have discussed with him, Mazi Nnamdi Kanu believes in himself and he believes in what he can do and he believes in his cause. Mazi Nnamdi Kanu believes that he never committed any crime. Mazi Nnamdi Kanu believes that he's not a terrorist. Mazi Nnamdi Kanu believes that he's not a criminal. Any amnesty that has to do with condition, he will never take it. He will prefer to die there. I know the person I'm talking about. I'm talking about the person I have a discussion with on Saturday and Sunday. So now, the political option, if I will be in the show of the president, right from onset, this particular issue shouldn't have come up. When this man started this agitation, of course, it did not start this agitation in your own regime. He started this agitation in the disaster regime of the late President Muhammad Buhari. That was when this agitation, when all these issues started. That was when he was arrested. That was when he was kidnapped from Kenya. That was when a lot of funny things happened in that. And we believe that this man is somebody, sickness really dealt with him and he was operating from a military angle. That one is understandable. Now that we have a Democrat, somebody that I, Maxwell, fought the struggle for democracy with. So we believe that you said, okay, my brother, come. Now I have taken over. What's the problem? What's the problem? Can we talk? Now that I have taken over, can you just give me opportunity to address this issue? Now that I know what we are even agitating, what gave rise to this, when somebody is trying to compare Nnamdi Kanu with Boko Haram, what is Boko Haram fighting for? That the execution is wrong. The Mazi Nnamdi Kanu said, my people are being marginalized. We are treated as slaves in this country. As a result of that, we prefer to be on our own. I want to exercise that right. Now, at least you know what he's fighting for. And you know the people that you can reach out to. You have Ohanese there, you have Igbo elders there, you have Igbo this and there, that you can reach out to. You can say, come, can we talk? Let's talk. Attorney General, discontinue this matter. Let's see how we can address this issue. That is what rule of law is all about. That's what leadership is all about. Not to allow somebody to say, go and convict him by all means, so that we give him amnesty, so that we use the amnesty to launch our political structure in Southeast. It doesn't work like that. You are creating more problem. And all of you know that this man is not a terrorist. Yes, he must have made one or two speech, which you know. I hear them saying that you can't even link with what happened for any reason. You know that that judgment is persecution, not prosecution. You know that Mazi Nnamdi Kanu have also suffered the highest injustice.
Eastern elites that are supposed to push for a political solution are against where they are quiet.
They're quiet. They be speaking out. I think what they be saying even before the court judgment.
Yes.
And some of them, deputies, Speaker of the House of Reps,
yes,
senators, even some of the governors speaking out, Abia governor, Enugu governor, and others speaking. Even the Anambra governor. Yes. But I tell you, Nnamdi Kanu's conduct is complicating issues for them, according to them. Even the day that they passed that judgment, did you watch his conduct in court?
Yes.
And they are saying, look, this conduct, that is not showing remorse. Well, someone said they have done nothing. But let us not pretend that nothing happened in the Southeast. People died in the Southeast. Over 3,000 people were killed in the Southeast. And some are linking them to him. You get the point now. That it is IPOB and ESN that are behind the killings. That was how the man went to court. And he just said, you made videos giving orders to your commanders to do this. So it have argued that, okay, yeah.
So let's have, you were in the line of thought
exactly.
for Maxwell.
Yes, some Southeast leaders are pushing for a political solution. And some are saying, Nnamdi Kanu's conduct in court that very day didn't show that there is any sign of remorse at all. It's complicating matters for them. Then number two, the argument that Nnamdi Kanu made videos giving orders to his commanders, whoever violated the sit at home, deal with him. And people were killed who violated the sit at home. As I say, Simon Ekpa in Finland is in jail now because of the same videos. He did also kill somebody, but that is in jail in Finland. So how do you respond to that?
Can I explain?
Go ahead, yeah.
Can I explain?
Yeah, go ahead, yes.
One, that's why this particular program is very, very important. In the first instance, I am a lawyer and I will not allow anybody to insult or to do anything that will amount to an insult to the Hello Chamber of Justice. That one is on that. I want to address that one first. You see, my dear brother, when you are something that has not affected to you, you can say anything you like. I have been into this matter since 2015, and I can tell you that judiciary, with due respect, has not been fair to Mazi Nnamdi Kanu. Judiciary has not been fair to Mazi Nnamdi Kanu. As I speak to you, Mazi Nnamdi Kanu have 6 judgments in his favor. 6 judgments. 1, Enugu State High Court, Federal High Court, Court of Appeal, Abuja. None. In fact, the worst of it is the one Court of Appeal ordered that Mazi Nnamdi Kanu should be released forthwith. Federal government said, Court of Appeal, you are talking Arab nonsense. We will not believe you. We will not obey you. We thought that they were joking. They refused to comply with that judgment. First day, second day, third day, fourth day, fifth day, sixth day, seventh day, eighth day. On the 9th day, they filed a motion for stay of proceedings, for stay of execution in a criminal matter using civil matter. File it in Court of Appeal under Court of Appeal civil procedural rule to stay an execution of a criminal matter. The same Court of Appeal that gave that judgment, another panel received it, and they did not say, what is going on here? We asked you to release this man. You have not complied with our judgment, and you are still turning around, coming back to ask us that we should grant you stay of execution. They granted that stay of execution. The first in history in the Nigerian criminal jurisprudence. Mazi Nnamdi Kanu was asking us, is it possible? We said that you have seen that it's possible. Now that one is on that. Federal High Court ordered that he should be released and paid 8 billion naira by federal government. Before then, federal government refused. Enugu State High Court to the same thing, they refused. My brother, you remember that he was enjoying his bail granted to him by the court. The same federal government, the same prosecution, used Operation Python Nance, went to his house, killed 38 persons and left with the 13 corpses. which made him to run away. We are talking about somebody being angry. Now, this thing now happened. The thing now, after that shock, the parents now left to on medical this thing to Europe, and both of them died there. Now Supreme Court now in their judgment gave one, court ought not have revoked his bail. 2, Nnamdi Kanu never jumped bail. 3, federal government misbehaved by sending Operation Python to his house. 4, the way and manner he was transported from Kenya to Nigeria.
Let's look at what this conviction means of Nnamdi Kanu actually means for the average Igbo person today. Do they see it as justice served, or this is just another deeper marginalization?
Every good thinking, right thinking Igbo man who is of core Igbo value see it as injustice and a deeper marginalization against the Igbo nation. We see it like that because if you look at the northern part of Nigeria, you find people who carry AK-47 negotiating with the government. And the policemen were there, army were there, the military men were out there, and they were negotiating, and they carried their guns back. And these guns were being imported into Nigeria by some people that we don't know. And then again, if you look at the story with Iboho in the other side, he was also talking about the World Republic, and he's gone free. It's no more, the case is no more being even mentioned. The other part of Nigeria, which is also a Biafra nation, part of Nigeria, which is a brother, sorry, will tell you, I will kill them, I will kill them, I will do that. And you see he carry AK-47 on camera. Nobody has arrested him. Nobody has even cautioned him. Nobody has called him to order. Nothing has been done. He's still moving around free. Even 3 days ago, he made a video and say, I will kill them. And then Nnamdi Kanu, he came talking about Igbo liberation. From that moment till now, they went to his house and almost killed everybody there. His parents, he lost his 2 parents because of that. Some things he did may not have been done properly because of his exuberancy as a young man. But I also believe that if the elites in Eboland, if our leaders, we are part of this, if they got involved and got close to him, they will have helped to organize things and put things in proper perspective. But he was all alone doing this. But if you look at me, you will see genuine love for Igbo nation. If I met him yesterday, 2 days ago, he will see genuine love for Igbo nation. So it is an injustice from every indication because he was not given even the rights. The motion he applied for, there's a motion he applied challenging the jurisdiction of the court. That would have been listened to. He was not given right to enter his final written address. And the time frame for that, for criminal matter, something that carries capital punishment, was just less than 1 month, less than 3 weeks, you have handled it. No, such a thing, you must give time to prove it beyond every reasonable doubt, if they really wanted justice. But it looks like the script was written and has been determined it will happen this way. So we see it as injustice. That's what the common man in the streets see. I'm only a bishop coordinating people's thoughts. So I'm trying to air people's thoughts and people's feelings from the streets, after that conviction.
I understand that you visited Nnamdi Kanu a couple of days back, and you also mentioned it in passing while you were speaking. So can you tell us about that visit? Just give us details on your interaction with him and what you learned from your visit.
As a bishop, I believe the church should actually play their part in some of these things to cushion effect, to bring balance to certain things, to make sure things are not overdone, to make sure that things are done within limits. So I have to really take out time to go to see him in Sokoto Prison Maximum Correctional Center. And we had almost an hour or so chatting, though the prison warders were all there hearing us as we're discussing, so that we don't discuss anything incriminating. But from what I observe about him, he's in such a right frame of mind. I mean, the guy is just so cool. He's not even bothered about the whole thing. He was the one encouraging me. He was the one telling me to be encouraged and to know that he's only, he was just encouraging, preaching to me even. And then it was a good time to go. If I didn't go there, I wouldn't have known. I thought with that conviction, he would be so moody. He would feel like packing up. But right there, he was begging them to allow him to talk to his wife, which was not granted to him. And he was also asking for them to allow him talk to his lawyer. That what they do is they say they have not gotten clearance from the presidency to allow him to talk with his lawyers because he needs to prepare his case. And he was supposed to be in Abuja today, being 28, I think today is 28, to be able to reconcile account with the court, the Federal High Court. He has not been granted that opportunity. The court should be able to give that someone, and that has not been done. The government has not given signal to Maximum Correction Center to bring in Sokoto. And if he doesn't come to Sokoto, to Abuja, to reconcile with the court, the account, they cannot be hearing in appeal court on the 4th of December that the case has been fixed for. So, and he's biting on his time. So they should give him justice and give him fair hearing. In England, when people are committing any crime in English land, England will give you money to buy a lawyer. They want to make sure you're not imprisoned illegally. They make sure they handle it with every sense of justice. So they should give him that listening, even if they want to do whatever, they should give him time and give him cooperation. He was supposed to be flown into Abuja. They're keeping him here in Sokoto, far away from where his trial will be happening. It may not have been the right decision, but it has been decided so. I don't know why they decided so. But he was begging. I was there when he was begging them and asking them to link up so that he can actually come to Abuja to file matters. To be able, because he was one with the federal himself, to be able to correct his account with the federal high court, so that they can proceedings in the appeal court, without which they cannot hear him, and he has only 90 days window for this appeal court trial. So he was there, but the main thing is that he was in right frame of mind. His mood was okay. I met a lovely young man. I met somebody who is, different beyond what you see in camera. If all the prisoners there and all the warders in that cell, in that prison, were all in peace with him. In fact, the young man is likable. He has a lot of intelligence. A lot is in him. This is the first time I'm meeting him one-on-one in my life. I just want to meet him, to encourage him. And I think he's hopeful that God will see him through. He's hopeful that the appeal courts will give him justice. He's hopeful that the Nigerian presidency will understand that he's not a terrorist, that he's only fighting for his people. He's hopeful that our leaders in Eboland, the governors and the senators, will come to terms with that fact. One of the senators was saying that because of his extension, 3,000 people were killed. That is not a fact. Some people just frame things up and start saying, we're all in Eboland. People were killed, yes. But most of those were killed because of extension. Those who were killed for extension were killed by Nigerian military, when they were not even carrying gun. And then I don't know if others were, because there are a lot of people who say they are non-government in Igboland, who start claiming all kinds of things. And this time they kill, IPOB will still come and say we are not the ones. So the police should have been able to capture 1 or 2 IPOB members and bring them on board to prove that these are IPOB members caught with gun that Nnamdi Kanu commanded to go and kill. Because oratory is not a crime. Nnamdi was not seen carrying any gun anyway. He was only talking from London. And yet, I'm not justifying the whole case. I'm not saying Nnamdi Kanu has done nothing bad. But I'm saying that if he has actually committed any crime, it should be proven beyond reasonable doubt. It shouldn't be in this kind of quagmire. It's looking at things being in a steady way. I do not think that the whole thing was properly done. In a country like this, I've seen justice system happen other places. He opened this the judgment, about 104 or 140 something pages judgment, and showed me the irregularities in the judgment. I saw it as a layman. It's obvious there. Some of the things he was sentenced for were things that were committed while he was in prison. So how can somebody be in prison in this custody and commit those things? And so we discuss other things that I may not be able to say online here. Okay,
just something you mentioned. You said that he was pleading with them to speak to his wife and to speak to his lawyer.
Yes.
But
Yes.
when you were there, was there any reason as to why they denied him access to his wife or to speak to his lawyer? Were you able to get that information?
Yeah, the person in charge he was talking to told him that he has not been given order, that he was asked to strip him of every communication. So he has not been allowed to speak to anybody. So he pleaded with them to get a welfare department of the prison, put a call across to his lawyer, a lawyer, so that they can ask him few things about the things he filed to correct it in writing. Because the man is in Abuja, he's in Sokoto. The man said he has not been allowed to do so, that he doesn't want to lose his job. And then he pleaded again that his wife is down and sick and crying. Can I talk with my wife? Through your own phone. The man said there's such order. He showed him in the judgment. The judgment says monitor him. The judgment did not say he should speak to anybody. Now what he would do, he would speak in English. They should bring the phone, any phone. He was speaking to his wife in English. They'll be hearing what they're saying. He will speak to his lawyer in English. They'll be hearing what he's saying. But he was told that the order has not been given from the presidency. So that was why he was deprived of that. And so his concern is that he may not be able to appear in the appeal court on 4th, fixed for his hearing, because he must come to Abuja on 28th, some days before the hearing, to reconcile matters with Federal High Court before they can carry the proceedings to the appeal court, upon which the appeal court can hear him. But such things, I don't know whether by now they have corrected it, but while I was there, it was difficult. The order has not been given yet.
How can the Igbo leaders also balance the emotional weight of Nnamdi Kanu's conviction with the need for practical political engagement with the Nigerian state?
I really think that the Igbo leaders, beginning from the governors and the other political leaders, should come together, because they are in disarray. They are not together. We are part of the Nigerian system. We are all in this nation. Nobody is more Nigerian than another. They should come together and be bold enough to come together in the interest of peace in Eboland. Because if they don't do that, I foresee something more harmful coming upon the Igbo people in the future. So I am saying this prophetically. They should be able to come together now and really come together and approach the presidency and handle this thing politically. Let Nnamdi Kanu be released. He has the freedom to agitate for Biafra, but he also told me that if Nigeria is fixed, why should he agitate for Biafra? Now, because Nigeria is going down every day, and the system you can see for yourself is going down, south, south, southeast. So come together as a people, and they approach the presidency, and let there be a political solution to this matter. Because I don't think that is really legally any case. I'm not a lawyer, but having inquired from some lawyers, because of the rendition that spoiled the case, and certain things by repealed law, and where the crime was said to have been committed, there are a lot of questions of jurisdiction. So if we really want to do justice in the court, he will be released to go. And of course, appeal court had listened before, discharged him in this matter. High court also did the same. And then I don't know what happened in Supreme Court. So you can see that legally in procedures in the court, there may not be any solution, because the judiciary seems to be determined one way or the other to do one. I don't know. I'm not a lawyer, but I think that Tinubu is a wiser person who understands that he needs every part of Nigeria. And holding this young man is creating more trouble in the East, because he has people believing him. You can see that almost every Igbo man, 80% of Igbo people love him. So he's like the leader, a kind of, a social leader in Eboland. In every nation of the world, you handle such people with care. If you don't handle them with care, it will create more problem for the people.
Now that Nnamdi Kanu has been convicted, does the Igbo nation also need a new strategy for pursuing the political and economic inclusion in Nigeria? And what could that strategy actually look like?
I think in the Igbo nation, the strategy I think that we should look at may not be something I can really say online, but let me bring the ones I can say online. Number one, Nnamdi Kanu is there, his own case is there, but I think the Igbo leaders lack one thing: unity. There is a place where Igbo leaders should be able to come together in unity and working with the church, because Igbo nation is probably majorly Christian domain. Working with the church to enlighten our people, so that we begin to talk about inclusion. It is so bad that in this republic, no Igbo man has any serious position in the government, and we have no place in government. And even the Igbo businessmen are being marginalized in different ways. I will not be able to say here. So the Igbo leaders should come together and start discussing strategy. Now, that unity is the first strategy that we need. I think we have discordant voices, both in the church and in politics, and in other places, because in the church you have Anglican, Roman Catholic, Saga. You have Pentecostals also in their own cases. And then in the government, even Igbo and Anambra and Imo may not be able to agree in certain things. All right? And then Imo and Abia can't agree. So we must see ourselves as a people and come together to think of our common good, that individual good. The moment we're able to kill self-interest, that's the first one. The second one is that we should be able to decide who rules us in Eboland. Because it looks like most of the governors in Eboland, not all of them, we are given. They were not elected by our people. So they are serving those who implanted them. So they have not interested of Igbo man in his heart. So the Igbo should be able to say no to this and stand to decide who rule them at any given time the election is happening. So that nobody will buy his vote, nobody will buy the position, but we elect who we want, so that we can have reason to ask him for account. These things are the things we'll do. So that when we send somebody to the house, like Habari Ben in there, you will see him talking for us. But others are not talking because they have been planted, either through the court. They spend some money to buy judgments, or they meet one or two persons in the north who influence their winning in the courts. And so they are there for the people. They have to close their mouth. And some of them are so corrupt. So that's the third one. If you're not corrupt, you can talk. But when you are corrupt, you cannot talk, because when you talk, they open your file for you. I am sure that if any Baribe has skeleton in the cupboard, he will have been gouged by now. I am sure that if P2B has something, P2B of Anambra State, former governor of Anambra State, he has something in the skeleton in the cupboard, they will have gouged on him. But because they have stressed and couldn't find anything on him, he can continue talking and working freely. So once you soil your hands, he that goes to equity must go with clean hands, they say. The Biafra struggle has not died. It's an ideology. They should bring Igbos on the table. There should be an inclusion of the Igbo man and the welfare of the Igbo man in the table. You can't believe there is Igbo men as strong as we are in business have no single seaport in Eboland functional. There is no single international airport in Eboland that is functional. The conviction they have given him now, handed over to him now, has actually, like somebody I was talking to a few days ago, told me he didn't believe in IPOB affair. But since they have, the Nigerian government has, sentenced Nnamdi Kanu to prison, that his own love for IPOB and Nnamdi Kanu has increased. So the more you treat somebody bad, the more you whip sentiments and the compassion in his favor. So that's what's happening. So the conviction of Nnamdi Kanu will rather increase the sentiment, increase the emotional feelings, increase the compassion, the sympathy that so many Igbos will have for him, compared to if he was released.
Thank you. Our time is up already. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
One more thing before we go. Mazi Nnamdi Kanu told me to tell Igbo youths to calm down. He said there should be no violence anywhere. This is one thing he kept sounding while I was there. He said it more than 10 times. That nobody should kill anybody. Nobody should go protesting. Nobody should go to the street doing any kind of riots. That everybody should calm down. That the right step is being taken for him to come out. That they should give time for him to come out instead of creating more problem for him while he's there.
Well, that was a very good one from this very bishop. Now, let's head up to this story. There are days in nation's history that feel like the sky itself has fallen. Days when a judgment in a courtroom far away sends a shockwave through towns, markets, churches, and living rooms. And for many in the Southeast, the day Mazi Nnamdi Kanu was convicted was one of those days. If you walked through Onitsha that evening, you would notice something strange. A hush, shops closing early, confrontations replaced by silence. In the words of Bishop Ikechukwu Egbonu, it was a day of mourning in Eboland. This is the backdrop of our story. One of the conviction, controversy, confusion, and the nation struggling to understand what comes next. Now, let's digest the journey from the lower chambers of the National Assembly to the cold bench of an Abuja courtroom, and finally into the corridors of Constitution itself. What comes next to Mazi Nnamdi Kanu? The option of appeal and the presidential pardon. Let's take it step by step. Starting with the chambers of Nigeria's National Assembly are usually noisy, but that day was different. Tension, thick as fog, hung over the green seat of the lower house. Honorable Judge Uzodinobi rose from his chair, adjusted his glass, and leaned into the microphone. Mr. Speaker, I rise on behalf of my people. We are not appealing. We are demanding the immediate release of Mazi Nnamdi Kanu. That was it, a simple sentence. But immediately, the chamber erupted. Some lawmakers began banging tables. It wasn't the first time. Every time Mazi Nnamdi Kanu's case was raised, either in upper chamber, that is red chamber, or green chamber, lower chamber, the interruption come violently and immediately. And you would ask yourself why? Because Mazi Nnamdi Kanu case is not just a case, he is a political earthquake. Mentioning him exposes the invisible lines that divide Nigeria, both ethnic, political, historical, cultural, and for the fact that many Nigerian politicians do not want to hear the truth. Some lawmakers see him as a symbol of injustice, others see him as a threat, and the chamber, like a pressure cooker, cannot contain the heat. Uzodinobi didn't back down. He shouted over the noise, "My people are not asking for favors. They are asking for justice, for peace, for fairness, for their son." Then away from this very analysis, another story was unfolding, one told quietly, almost reluctantly, by Barrister Maxwell Okpara. He described the hours after Kanu's conviction, and what he narrated shocked many. According to Okpara, as soon as judgment was delivered, Kanu was whisked away, not in regular van, not in standard prison vehicle, but in what he called a private jet transfer, according to what he said Nnamdi Kanu told him. Imagine that, a convicted man moved like a secret cargo, unannounced, unphotographed, unreachable. Now for the lawyers, this posed a serious problem, because how do you defend a man whose location changes like the wind, and whose location is as far as anything? How do you prepare an appeal for someone who cannot meet you freely? How do you build a case when every logistical detail is scattered? Okpara revealed that each time Nnamdi Kanu had to appear in court, he needed to be flown or driving under heavy secrets. This is not even a problem. The problem is, how is it possible? Would there be possibility for the government, for the federal government, to always bring him up each time he has a case with the same route of using jets? Tell me, is this how an appellant is supposed to be treated? Will they be flying him with private jets for every appeal hearing? What exactly are they hiding? Or is someone silently trying to make appeal impossible for Mazi Nnamdi Kanu? That is for that. Now, talking about why Kanu's lawyer withdrew. It will shock you to hear that in this very case of Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, 1 + 1 is actually meant to be 2, but in Kanu's case, it was 5 or 7. Let's slow down here, because this moment is very crucial in this very analysis. During one of their private discussions, Kanu turned to his lawyers and asked a simple question, a devastating one. Why is 1 + 1 not equal to 2 in my case? What he meant was this: court orders in his favors were not obeyed, and some sort of, rulings. Appeal rights were actually, dishonored. Basic proceedings were ignored. Treatment that, should apply under the law were not applied to him. He was forced to enter whereas the law at hand doesn't support so. The lawyers, especially Okpara, felt the weight of that question, the frustration in him. It wasn't a legal query. It was the cry of a man who believed the system was stacked against him. But what happened next surprised everyone. The lawyers withdrew from the case, not because they abandoned him, not because they lacked courage, but because they feared something bigger, professional misconduct. In Maxwell Okpara's explanation, as officers of the court, we must obey the court, we must obey the judge. If situations arises where our loyalty to our client and our loyalty to the court clashes, we must step aside so we are not forced into misconduct. In simple terms, the environment was becoming dangerous. The tension between Kanu and the trial judge, Justice Omotosho, was growing. Outbursts in the courtroom were becoming frequent, and the lawyers feared a situation where something could explode, a confrontation, a refusal, an incident that would put their careers on the line. So the political heat was simply too much in this very case. So they stepped aside, and at that moment, Kanu began, moving toward representing himself. And this is to those who are asking, why did they withdraw? Why is Nnamdi Kanu defending himself? And all sort of question that concerns that. It was actually a dangerous part, because self-representation in a political case as this wasn't bravery, it is strategy by desperation. And this is the consequences, because we need to be clear. In legal battles like this, representing yourself is like entering a battlefield without armor. The risk is very simple. If you fail to, change certain elements of the judgment, if you don't, raise procedural objections the right way, if you miss critical filing deadlines, the court's earlier findings become final. And I have this to say, please, to Kanu's counsel, they should insist that Mazi Nnamdi Kanu should not face the appeal court alone. This is very important. I know they are bothered about their career and all of that, but it is important that Mazi Nnamdi Kanu is not allowed to face this appeal court alone. He should not represent himself, because in the end, politics may seek compromise, but law does not forgive procedural mistakes. And I love the response of Maxwell Okpara when an interviewer, the host, tried to paint Kanu as responsible for deaths in the Southeast, suggesting that his radio broadcast led to violence. Maxwell Okpara did not flinch. He replied him with calm fairness. In law, what matters is verifiable proof. If there is a death, you must show clear linkage to the accused. Up to today, there is no court-proof evidence linking Kanu to any lives that were lost in the Southeast, because legal guilt is not determined by emotions, tribal sentiments, personal opinion, or media narrative. It is determined by evidence presented under oath. And so far, the prosecution has not tied any specific loss of life directly to him, not in a way that satisfied the judicial scrutiny. There is nothing to hold against Mazi Nnamdi Kanu. That aside, let's talk about the nagging question. Let's talk about why Kanu's court outbursts are understandable. Let's put ourselves in his shoes for a moment. You are arrested illegally. A foreign court says you were illegally abducted. A Nigerian court rules in your favor. Another says you should be transferred, treated, or given access. But those orders are not obeyed, or were not obeyed. For 5 years, you've been in detention. Is that not a persecution? The medical results were modified, doctored, just to make sure that no one cares about your health. Your family struggles to reach you. Your lawyers are frustrated. Your case moves in circles. Would you not shout? Would you not demand answers? Would you not question the process? Maxwell Okpara said something touching. Even a strong man breaks when justice is denied over and over. Hinting back again to this Bishop Ikechukwu, the voice of a wounded people is actually, raised here. According to him, he said the judgment wounded the Igbo soul, that people cried in silence, that the atmosphere across the Southeast shifted from anger to heartbreak. He spoke of injustice, of political sabotage, of leaders who refuse to defend their own, of a federation where one region feels unheard and unprotected. I pray President Tinubu listens, because peace in Eboland is tied to injustice for Kanu. Whether you agree or not, he his words capture a real emotional truth. Then, what options are left for Mazi Nnamdi Kanu? Then you talk about the appeal court. This is a lawful route. It demands proper legal representation. Like I said, Mazi Nnamdi Kanu needs legal reps. Also, proper production of the detainee, access to the case file. There should be no obstruction from security agencies. And the truth remains that without the provision of all these things mentioned, appeal becomes an illusion, a right on paper, not in practice. Then the second option for Nnamdi Kanu is political solution. The constitutional road to presidential pardon, actually cited in section 175. The Nigerian Constitution provides a clear answer in that section. The president can grant a pardon, grant a respite, grant a substitute lighter sentence, or even wipe the record clean. He can say, "Oya Nnamdi Kanu, you can go home." But he must consult the Council of State, act in accordance with the advice of the Attorney General in many cases. Well, I'm not even seeing this happen because I don't understand the kind of attention the Eastern governors actually giving to this political whatever. Because there's been records of several occasions where the same people talked about it, they had meeting with it, and up to today, we've not had any substantial proof that they are pushing for any sort of political resolution. So as we will continue to give update about this particular story is not over. It is moving slowly, painfully, through courtrooms, chambers, communities across Eboland. And Mazi Nnamdi Kanu is now standing at the crossroads. One thing is very clear. This case is no longer just about one man. It's about justice. It's about national healing. About whether Nigeria can correct its own contradictions. And until a final decision is made, the Southeast will continue to watch and wait and hope Nnamdi Kanu gets justice. As always, this is About Perspectives, your domain for unfiltered news and raw political analysis. We'll give it to you here the way it is. There's no addition, there's no subtraction. Until next time, if you found this breakdown insightful, don't forget to like, share this video, leave your comment, and of course subscribe and turn on the notification so you would always get notified each time we drop any update at all in this channel. Thank you for watching.